Welcome to part 2 of reading while traveling. If you've watched a previous video, then you know that I've been reading the book Yellow Wife, and I took a trip to New York. In this video, we'll get to know the characters a little more, get to know a little bit more of the story, and I'll take you around New York with me. Today is bookstore day. Wow. That's pretty cool. One World Trade Centers are right there.
We're here?
That's it right there.
Oh my God.
Isn't that it?
I don't know.
As far as sleeps go, it wasn't a bad sleep. I snore, and I kept thinking that I was going to be keeping my daughter up. So every time I would snore, I would wake myself up. I don't think that I mentioned the name of the hotel that we're staying in. I know I gave you guys a tour in the last video. It is the Public Hotel. It is in Soho, and a lot of YouTubers. I've seen a lot of YouTubers come in and out and through this hotel. That's not why I picked it. It was just one of the first ones that popped up when I looked for hotels in Soho. The plan was just to stay around Soho, which is what we did, and we pretty much walked everywhere. This hotel has everything. It has a rooftop, restaurants, a juice bar. Here's the iconic escalator that you always see the YouTubers on. It was pretty cool, and it has a co-working space in the lobby. The food is pretty good too, and it's contactless check-in, so you see a person when you need them. Otherwise, you're on your own. And then there's the view from the rooftop. It's very cute. So of course, I'm all back now from New York, but I wanted to pop in and give some background on the characters. I'm sitting in the car waiting for my hubby to run in and pick up our dinner. It's Sunday, and I just thought I'd give you guys some background on like the characters and a little more information on the story. There may be some spoilers here, so if you are going to read this book, I would probably just click off now for a few minutes or a couple minutes. I'm going to try to make this pretty quick though. So as far as characters are concerned, this book is very much woman-centric, and we meet a lot of women in this book, okay? And the women in this book are all subservient in some sort of way. And while a lot of books that deal with slavery, while a lot of them talk more about how ugly slavery is and how bad it can be and all of that, this book talks a lot about choices and the different choices that people make. In all honesty, a lot of them are just not good choices. Reading the book and following the story and seeing what our main character went through, it makes me really mindful of the choices that I make, and how because of women like her, I have good choices. I don't have to make bad choices. And that's very telling. So let me get in real quick the characters so you know what I'm talking about and a little more of the story before we get back into our New York vlogs. So you have, and I'm remembering because it's been a couple weeks now. By the way, y'all, I have just been able to pick up another book since reading Yellow Wife because it stuck with me and is still sticking with me so much. But you have Phoebe Dolores Brown, our main character. You have her mother, Ruth, who is the medicine woman on the plantation. And she has an alliance. It's forced from her point of view, but it's again the hand she was dealt with the master. He, you know, she is the person that he goes to at night, okay? And then he has his wife, the mistress. She is a character in the book who also makes some very odd choices, and she has better choices, obviously, because she's white. There are other people who work in the house, and pretty much everyone on the plantation, they know how things are supposed to go. You know what I mean? Like, they know what the order of things should be. And the mistress's lady in waiting, I guess we'll call her, when she passes on, you know, Phoebe becomes her maid in waiting. And she's not too happy that, you know, her husband's illegitimate daughter, who happens to be the child of a slave, who happens to also be very beautiful, she's not happy that that's who she has to have as her lady's maid. And so she does try to make Phoebe's life miserable. Now, Phoebe also has a great love on the plantation. His name is Essex, and he is the guy who takes care of the horses. And Phoebe is very much, they're in love and they want to run away together at some point. And that was always the plan. Phoebe's mother, Ruth, also taught Phoebe to not see herself as just a slave. So the plan and the master promised that she would get her freedom and that she would be able to go to a girls' school in Massachusetts where she could possibly pass for white or at least be free. That was what he was trying to orchestrate. But during the course of all that, Phoebe's mom and the master die. And I'm not going to tell you very much about that because the story itself will rip your heart out how all this occurs. And I'm not going to give anything away except for the fact that that they died. Essex, and these are the spoilers. So like I said, click off if you don't want to hear this part. Essex, her guy, he ends up leaving the plantation and running away, which gets everybody in trouble, especially Phoebe. So because Phoebe's guy ran away, she's partially blamed. She's blamed for it. And the mistress implicates her in the runaway, the mistress implicates her in the escape of Essex and sends her away. And that's how she ends up down south. She's already in Virginia, but she ends up further down south. She ends up further down south in Richmond, Virginia, where the slave jail is. And that's where she starts her whole new life. And that's where she really learns about her choices, and she realizes that she doesn't have very many good ones. Phoebe ends up with a son from Essex, and she does not find out until she's down at the slave jail. The jailer, that's what we call him. He does have a name. It's LaPierre. His last name is LaPierre. The jailer, he is very enamored with Phoebe because she's beautiful. So he decides to make her the mistress of the jail. But he does not have any affinity for her son, her slave-born son. And that factors a lot in the choices that Phoebe makes. It's a very interesting story. And on the way back from New York, I was reading the story and I was just, and then there's a couple parts that bring tears to your eyes. It's a brutal, brutal, brutal existence. The jail is a half acre. It's known as the Devil's Half Acre. And this is based on real events. There was a true jail. It was called the Devil's Half Acre. There were several slave jails, and they weren't jails or prisons in the sense that they put people there for life or that they put them there to keep them there for committing a crime. They were mainly pass-throughs where a slave did something wrong and they would get sent down there for punishment, and then they would resell them, or they would for the young women, a lot of mixed race young women would end up down there. They would be sent away because the mistresses didn't want them on the plantation because they were beautiful or whatever. They would send them down there and they would make them fancy girls, which in essence prostitute them. Human trafficking, basically. And Phoebe found herself in the position of having to get the fancy girls ready for whatever person wanted to claim them and use them however they wanted to, which for her was torture. She really did not enjoy doing that, but it was one of the choices she made so that her children, because she did end up having, I think, three more daughters. I have to remember that. She ended up having more daughters for the jailer, and her daughters, grew up with the privilege that her son did not. So there's a whole lot more to the story that I don't want to give away because I don't want to make this just filled with spoilers. And knowing what you know now, you still have to actually read the book to really get the details and get down into the nitty-gritty and to understand why this story sticks with me so much. And while I was on my trip, I was thinking about the choices that I made, because everything from what Phoebe ate to what she wore. And in this instance, it wasn't even always that like she was dressed in rags. Like at one point, she chose to wear her servant's outfit so that she would not be appealing to the jailer. But then realized at some point that getting dressed up and making herself look presentable and fancy and cute, that she would get his favor. Now that was evident in the first 120 pages that I read on the way up to New York. And while I was there, I kept thinking like, oh my gosh, the amount of freedom that I have to be able to wear what I want, to be able to sit and eat in a restaurant where I want to sit and eat, to go to a bookstore. Phoebe could read. She was taught to read because they were preparing her, the master, even though he wasn't a cruel master like the jailer, he was still a slave owner. So, you know, I'll give him a little bit of a pass, a tiny bit of a pass, but not really, because you still own slaves. But he wanted Phoebe to be educated. He wanted her to know how to read. And so he didn't stress out about the reading, whereas the jailer was going to punish anybody that he caught teaching people how to read. So he tricked Phoebe into letting him know that she knew how to read. And at one point, you know, he gave her a book just to see if she could read, and she fell for the trap or whatever. But she also could play the piano. She had a lot going for her, which put her in a position to help others. And that's eventually what she did. But were her choices good choices? No. And that just let me know that women who made choices like she made it possible for me to make the choices that I made. Our second day in New York City, our first full day, we stayed in the Soho area because Soho is pretty big to walk, and we wanted to just walk everywhere. We didn't want to have to rely on cabs or Ubers or Lyfts or anything like that, or even the train to get around. We just wanted to be able to walk to the shops, to walk to the restaurants, to walk wherever we wanted to go. Our first stop was Sadelle's because I saw it on TikTok, I think, or maybe YouTube. I can't remember. And they have bagels, and they have gluten-free bagels, and my baby girl is gluten-free. And we love to start a day with a good bagel. She makes her own bagels. So she makes the sourdough ones to ensure that she's not being glutened. She is not a celiac, but she does have a gluten intolerance, and so she was able to get good gluten-free bagels here. They do a tower here at Sadelle's. You get your lox, your bagels, you know, you have bacon, whatever you like. And the bagels are really good. I had the everything bagel and the onion bagel, and I was very impressed. Now, baby girl's bagels are better because she's my baby girl, but Sadelle's bagels were very, very, very good. And I know it's New York, so you'd be hard pressed not to find a good bagel. What was very interesting about this place was there weren't very many people who looked like us. Not that that matters to me. That hasn't mattered to me in years. And I know for some people, it's their whole world. For me, it's not. I go places where I'm one of one, one of two all the time. I go places where my face there may be unexpected. It may not be. I don't really think about it. But I will say the book kind of had me in my feelings to a certain extent. Most of the people that worked at this place looked like us, but not very many patrons here. There were others though, and that was refreshing because it's America in 2024, and that's how it should be. But still, you do encounter times when you are one of one, one of two. And how do you deal with that? I love that I just have the choice to do that. And for the most part in my life, in my 53 years, I've been able to go places and be around people who don't look like me and it not really be an issue, at least not for me. Maybe I'm oblivious, maybe I'm not, but I'm all about living my life and enjoying my life and doing the things that I want to do and going the places that I want to go to, going to the places that I want to go to. I don't restrict myself in that way. I know that hasn't always been the case for people of color, for women of color, for Black women. I know that hasn't always been the case, but that doesn't mean that it will always be hard or bad or strange, if that makes sense. And I know that I owe it to women like Phoebe, who made hard choices so that future generations wouldn't have to. And if we think that life is bad now, just imagine if you lived back then. It's not to say that we still don't have things that we should fight for and that we still don't have things that we should try to change, because you should always try to change when things are not going right for everybody. But let's not even pretend that being a Black woman in America is anything like it was back then, because it's not. That may be a little blunt for some people, but I'm going to enjoy this time that we live in because I can. And I'm going to always fight to keep it this way or to make it better. We're not going back, though. We're not going back. And we need to acknowledge that back then, there were no good choices. There were only choices of survival. There was a line in the book where Ruth, Phoebe's mom, spoke about living a life of gratitude. Even in her circumstances, she still spoke about living a life of gratitude. And that stuck with me because I am grateful for where I am today, because it could be so much worse. And I know that not everybody is where I am in life, or not everyone is living the life that I live and can see it from my perspective. But I had to start somewhere too. Keep living, keep hoping, keep wishing, keep working, keep praying, keep pushing forward. And just know that while life may not be perfect, it's better than it was, and you're making it better for someone in the future. It's very interesting because I was thinking about being the only person who looked like me, or one of the few people who looked like me in that particular restaurant. But it's interesting for me because later on that day, you saw the outfit that I'm wearing. It's a rocker t-shirt. It's a lyric from Hotel California, one of my favorite songs by the Eagles. And I had on a bubble skirt and my Adidas Sambas. And I really felt like I looked cute. And no lie, we passed by a couple of guys. They happened to be the same color as us. And they yelled, "Stop dressing like a white girl when you're not white." And it's like, one of the things that I've learned is you're kind of damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Sometimes it's your own people that you have to fight with, unfortunately. You have to fight with them to just live. But that happened. And believe it or not, that was a bit of a theme in the book as well, but I'll get into that in part 3 of this Reading While Traveling vlog. We'll discuss what Phoebe's life was like after she moved to the jail and the outcome for her and her family. As you saw earlier, we visited 2 bookstores on this particular day in New York. One was the McNally Jackson bookstore, and the other one was Bibliothèque. McNally Jackson just has the greatest stationery and paper items there, and I was like a kid in a candy store. Plus, I did also buy a couple of books, which I'll show you in another video. And Bibliothèque was a nice surprise. I actually bought a blind date with a book, which I've never done before, but I couldn't resist. And they have a really good limeade. I know that if I lived in Soho or anywhere near that area, I would probably go there all the time to sit and read and get work done, because it's a nice co-working space there as well. One thing about New York, they're going to give you a co-working space. Well, that's it for this video. I'm going to love you and leave you here. In the next one, like I said, we're going to discuss some other themes in the book. I'll introduce you to some new characters, and you'll see what else we got up to on our last day in New York. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.